Hi Anti-Society, welcome back to the Antisocial Planet, and today we are checking out episodes 232 and 233 of Bleach. So my patrons have reminded me to come back to Bleach. It's been a minute, and I apologize. I have been busy and distracted by other things, but we are back into the zanpakuto arc to really, I think, get into the main narrative of the story. We had a lot of setup with the first couple of episodes that were just getting into like zanpakuto and their own entities of those weapons, tools for the Soul Reapers, them taking on their own humanoid forms, which, while presented some really cool character designs, means that our Soul Reaper characters are now without their main weapon, and since the zanpakuto have decided to have a little bit of an uprising against Soul Society, it causes a few issues in the actual fighting, combating part of that particular disagreement. So a lot of setup for that one. We have Byakuya, who's kind of missing at the moment. We also have the head captain somewhere captured. We have Rukia running away into the living world and being followed by her zanpakuto spirit, who seems a little bit intense. So lots of stuff going on leading up to this arc. So I am very excited to come back and explore some more of the filler arc stuff. Of course, be back with Bleach as we continue to wait for some of the new episodes to come out. So let's just get back into this and get into the reaction for episode 232. In 3, 2, 1, go. Yes, they are very intermingled, aren't they? Which is why I'm interested to see what happens now that they've separated. Because if their abilities are linked to their Soul Reaper soul, then what happens when they aren't directly working with their Soul Reaper anymore? I don't know, we're gonna find out. Ugh, with the nostalgic opener. I feel oddly nostalgic about Bleach, even though it hasn't been that long since I finished the main arc. I'm just distracted by the music. Don't mind me. I need to get back into going through the soundtrack for Bleach in my long list of the things that I need to get back to doing regularly on the channel. I also just like Scandal's music in general, so I feel like that's part of it too. So, a tad bit of destruction. Just a little bit. Nope. Oh. Oh. He's just being worried about you. I mean, you seem fine if you can swing a punch like that. That must be really hard for Rukia because he's like her only family. And they've had their ups and downs, to say the least, between their relationship, but have gotten to a point where they can like rely on each other. And for her to like not have that like pillar to her life, I'm sure is very chaotic, mixed in with like not being able to rely on her weapon anymore, not being able to rely on like the stability of Soul Society. Like she's kind of losing those important pieces of like what makes her life feel safe. And I feel like even with all of that happening, having her brother with her would make her feel a whole lot better. And then him missing and her kind of seeing it's partly her fault for like needing protection and stuff, I'm sure is gonna do quite a number on her psyche. Uh-oh. Who got encased in ice? A random bystander? Yeah, I'm like, 'cause ice seems like Rukia's zanpakuto. And she's gonna feel responsible for that too. Because, it's her zanpakuto. So if it's doing all of this damage, she's gonna take ownership of that, even whether or not she should or not. I'm sure that she will. It's a good point though. Everyone has their own special relationship with their zanpakuto. Also, Ichigo's interior world seems to be slightly chaotic on account of the hollow. So, maybe saying like Zangetsu will be fine is a little bit too confident. You know what I mean? He is blended with the hollow. So, a little up in the air at that one. She might not see them as innocent either if they like represent the oppression she believes she was part of. Which is also like also kind of there. She was being used as a tool, maybe against her will. I don't really know the origin of Zanpakuto. It's not gonna work because she's over there. See, I want to know the origin. Were you captured? Are you prisoners? Did you do something you were supposed to, or was it a contract? I'd like some details. Well, I don't know if that's true either. Rukia's got her own power going on. It's just that they work very closely with Zanpakuto. Like I said, it's their main weapon. It's their main tool. So I feel like a lot of them rely very heavily on their Zanpakuto, which is gonna come back and get them in this instance where they can't use it. Don't believe it. Prove her wrong. That was poetic. What's it from? Should I know what it's from? Because I don't. Not off the top of my head, anyway. It's okay if at first you don't succeed. Try an alternative. True, she is quite lovely. I don't think that's the point of the whole thing going on, though. Another good question, though, is like, Ichigo did a bunch of interior work, right? He spent some time chatting with Zangetsu. How many of the other Soul Reapers have spent any significant time doing that? Because, I mean, yeah, they have to find out the name and stuff, but do they just like meditate and go and hang out with their zanpakuto? Or do they not bother? In which case, do they really know them? Well, that's a terrifying thing. It's like, where did she go? It's the continual difference in levels, too. Like, she keeps being in a higher position from Rukia, which is very symbolic. She's preferring to stay up higher, which means she's always looking down at Rukia. I wonder if that'll shift when they inevitably end up having some kind of rematch or seeing each other again, if we'll see them on more level playing field, or if it'll switch. Who's like on the higher up to the other. Oh, did Ichigo show up? Yeah, I recognize that spiritual pressure. Yeah, you can't expect him to just watch you get beat up. It's not gonna happen. I bet Ichigo's a very calming presence for her because he's like stable, but also he has that attitude of like, we'll just figure it out. Like, we have to figure it out, so we will. Instead of like getting overwhelmed, I feel like Rukia can kind of overanalyze things. So she continues to be higher, which I think says a lot about how she views herself. Okay, but be careful. She's a little bit intense. I understand why Ichigo is hesitant. Because he knows that she matters to Rukia, but at the same time, stay on your toes. Yeah, move. Boy, what did I just say? Weird glowing circle, run. It's never a good thing. Ooh, she's good though. I wonder if we'll see Zangetsu, take on a humanoid form, but like team up with Ichigo. Because I would like to see that. I wonder how that'll make the other zanpakuto view him though. If Zangetsu's the only one that doesn't side with them. Yeah, he's not afraid of being called foolish. Believe me. He has been called that before. I think it's interesting too that Ichigo's spiritual pressure kind of has like a fire feeling to it. And then fighting against ice. Like the white ice and then the black almost flame like spiritual pressure, the contrast. Don't give her away. But also be careful. We've been through this. Well, that seems a little bit vindictive. She probably knows Rukia really well, though, considering they've been together for a really long time. I mean, I don't know if Rukia needs to release her, but it's a nice symbolic gesture. Oh, see, and now we have them on even ground. I think they're starting to kind of see each other for who they actually are. Whether or not that'll be enough to patch over what's happened, probably not. We're pretty early on. But they're at least starting to see one another. I think it's interesting that she spent all the time saying she was angry at Rukia, but now she's like, you should need to have me around. You should fear not having me with you. And also, I'm probably just fearing for her life in general. I think it says a lot about Rukia that when someone threatened, like the fact that she's being threatened to lose everyone who's important to her, and she's saying, I'm letting go of any kind of anger or resentment or anything and taking responsibility for what's happening. You know, like she finds sadness in the fact that someone feels that resentment towards her and her actions, as opposed to being angry and lashing out, which I think says a lot about who she is as a person. And I think that's what her Selecto is realizing, kind of seeing Rukia in a different light than maybe they had up to that point because they had so much anger and resentment. And the fact that Rukia so willingly is like, if you want to be free, if that's truly what you want, I'm going to give it to you. Like she doesn't want to keep someone against their will as, you know, part of her power. Ooh, that's interesting too. The reaching out. That at the end, she wanted to not let go. I think also says a lot about her and her growth. I'm saying her because her name is many syllables and I will not remember it. I only remember Zangetsu because it's only 3 syllables. Oh, hello. Hello again. Nice eyeliner. I think some of the other Soul Reapers might put up a bit more of a fight. That's not an answer. Sure. Was I supposed to be shocked by that? I wasn't. I assumed he was a Zapato. I assumed he was part of the group. Do we know if he's one of the Soul Reapers? Zanpakuto? I feel like he wasn't. And that's what like kind of makes him an outlier to kind of lead the rebellion. I think Kizagi's Zanpakuto design is my favorite, which is fitting because the actual like weapon, his design was one of my favorites too. But just like this like shadow, almost like jester design thing going on. I just think it's really cool. A little bit, quite a bit off-putting, but it's a cool design. I'm excited to learn about the other ones more. Oh no! Zangetsu! Hang on, I want them to be friends and fight alongside each other. It's funny that they still have the Ahankar encyclopedia stuff. Yes. I actually really love that the first kind of Zanpakuto Soul Reaper confrontation that we had was with Rukia. I think one, because it kind of decides her involvement really early on, because Rukia is obviously one of the main characters, so if we had it kind of up in the air about what she was going to do about her Zanpakuto for a while, there might be some suspense there, but I think there's something to be gained from her immediately dealing with that issue. And I think it's also a very Rukia response, that she's like, oh no, I've been holding this being against their will, taking them along with me, using their ability, having them fight for me, and apparently they didn't want any of that. I have to let them go. And that's just so in tune with who she is as a person, that she's never ever going to make someone do something that they don't want to do. And I think she feels so much guilt about the idea that she has been doing that unknowingly, that she had that ignorance to force someone into doing something that made them feel captive, that made them feel like they didn't have free will and had any part in the decision making of what was going on with their life. I bet she feels horrific about that. Her learning about that is, you know, confusion and, you know, being upset that her Zanpakuto is like attacking innocent people, but she isn't like trying to be malicious against her Zanpakuto, and then learning about those motives, saying, if you want your freedom, if that's really what you want, I'm going to fully give it to you. Like, I release you, you're not mine anymore, we are not connected, and you get to decide now what you do with your life. And then having her Zanpakuto reaching out for her at the end and only being stopped. I love that instant regret of like thinking that's what you want, and you're so fueled by anger and resentment and all of these things, but also the flip side of that, of her desperately wanting to be needed. She wants Rukia to need her and rely on her and respect her. I think that's a huge part of it, is she wants Rukia to realize how much she needs her Zanpakuto, and for them to create more of a partnership between them. Because also, I'm sure for Rukia's Zanpakuto, like being that Zanpakuto is like what she knows best, and she's spent a lot of time there, and it's like what is stable in her life, talking a lot about stability in terms of like Soul Society and the other Soul Reapers losing a lot of that. But it's also for the Zanpakuto, they've completely given up their way of life, and maybe that seems very freeing when you're in that place of being very fueled by your emotions and you just want to get out of that place. But then once you have to make a lot of decisions and you have to rebuild, and it can be terrifying. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, but it does mean that it's scary and you have to start over. I know if I can kind of simplify this a lot because it's not exactly the same, but I remember I grew up in one house in one town my entire life, and then when I went away to university, I moved, and it was like this huge freedom thing where like I got to live on my own in a different place and like meet completely new people. I only had like a couple of family members in the whole city. I'd never lived in the city before. Like it was so many new experiences happening simultaneously, and it was very exciting until it happened. And then it was very difficult and it was scary, and I didn't know how to do a bunch of things because suddenly I didn't have all of that stability of the familiar around me. And it was a great decision in retrospect that once I adjusted and I figured things out and was able to do my own thing, it was a great experience, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything. But it was really hard at the beginning because you have to get through all of those barriers of figuring out like who you are without those normal things around you. Like I grew up in a town where like everyone knew me as connected to like my parents, my grandparents, or my brother. Like everyone knew me connected to some other instance, and then suddenly nobody knew me, and I had to figure out who I was and how to present myself and things like that. So it can be really terrifying to find yourself in a completely new situation, and I think that that's what the Zanpakutos are going through, and it could be really good for them and it could be exactly what they want. But I think in the case of Rukia's Zanpakuto, they were realizing, hang on, Rukia is actually a good person and wants what's best for me, and I've thrown that away, and she's just giving me what I want. Now what do? I think that there was just so much emotion behind wanting to be free, and now it has gone to an extreme, and now hopefully, I mean, I know that Rukia has her Zanpakuto and its abilities later, so we're going to get to a point where they figure something out, but I hope that it becomes something that's a little bit more of a partnership and like understanding of each other and what each other wants. Like I was saying in the reaction, I'm like, do Soul Reapers just like chit chat with their Zanpakuto? I know we saw a little bit of Arenji who was talking to his, but how often does that happen where they actually connect with the personality of their Zanpakuto? I don't know. I mean, we have people like Kenpachi who just like does not care, doesn't even know the name of his Zanpakuto, which if I remember, Kenpachi is like off somewhere. We haven't seen him yet and what he's up to with his zanpakuto, so that'll be interesting when we get that reveal. But I like having this kind of be the beginning of those relationships, because I feel like Rukia is probably the most straightforward, of her being like, yes, I will definitely set you free if that's what you want. But I think that some of the other Soul Reapers might have a very different reaction to their zanpakuto wanting to be free, or maybe their zanpakutos want slightly different things. It might be that they have other motives behind wanting freedom or rising up against Soul Society. We don't know yet, but I am very excited to continue into this, learning about some of the other ones. It looks like we're going to be getting into Zangetsu a little bit in the next one, so let's get into episode 333. In 3, 2, 1, go. See, that's the thing that I was talking about too, about how, like, if their powers and shape are connected to the Soul Reaper that they're bonding with, when they lose that bond, what does that mean for them? And that might also be some of that fear that we saw with Rukia's zanpakuto when they were finally, you know, released from each other. She was like reaching out for her again because, you know, part of her abilities, part of her form is based off of Rukia and their connection with each other. I'm very excited to get into some of the zanpakuto that we don't know a ton about, because some of them I still haven't learned much about their abilities because I haven't gotten far enough into the manga yet, and obviously the new episodes aren't out yet, so I'm excited to find out what happens with some of them. We haven't learned like anything about Urahara, Urahara's zanpakuto, which is like the um walking stick, right? We've seen little bits of its ability, but we haven't actually seen him full on use it. It's weird because there are like so many episodes of Bleach. There's so many, and I've like caught up, but I haven't read the manga yet. So I know there's a bunch of story that just hasn't been adapted yet. So it's weird to have seen like 100 plus episodes of this series and still have a bunch of blanks. Sad violins coming in. It just reminded me that I really have to come back to the OST, like even the instrumental stuff, because some of them are just gorgeous. See, look how sad Rukia's face was in that moment. Like, she was just sorrowful to think that she had caused this kind of pain and anger for someone. Well, hello there. We just keep and watch. It will be interesting to see if they can work together. You know what I mean? Because the Soul Reapers are very different in their personalities, but they kind of have their own, you know, squads and things like that, and in that way they organize themselves to be able to work together. But the Zanpakuto have never had to like have a system of how to work together because they haven't had to. They've always had Soul Reapers to kind of filter that for them. So just because they all have a common enemy, a common objective, doesn't mean that they can actually work together, because they've never had to have like their own hierarchy. really. I feel like it is important because if we've learned one thing from Bleach is that if people already know about Ichigo and they are the antagonist, there's probably some layers to that one. Okay, but Ichigo, does Rukia want to have her zanpakuto back? I feel like it's a complicated relationship now. So if zanpakuto are born from like the hearts of soul reapers, then are they capable of existing without bonding with the soul reaper? Because something like a mod soul can't exist without someone giving a body to them, right? So if a zanpakuto doesn't have like a weapon to kind of be their body, are they okay just existing? I get that they're separate souls, but they still need like a soul without a body seems dangerous. So he must also be someone's zanpakuto, whether or not they're around anymore or not. He must have belonged to someone. It's true. Just because you might not have viewed someone as being inferior doesn't mean that they didn't feel that way about the relationship. Because Zangetsu, ooh, I like the music coming in, the dramatic shift with something that's very like quick and almost like metallic with like the keys. I'm trying to think if we've seen that sword somewhere before. Maybe we have, and I just don't remember. And if I don't remember, I apologize. But I also feel like because it's a filler arc, it has to be self-contained. So he could be the Zanpakuto of someone we haven't met yet, who's like just part of this arc. I gotta remember that it's filler, and therefore isn't necessarily intermingled with everything. I'm used to having to dig back multiple arcs to make sense of something in Bleach. Ooh, trippy. Come on, Ichigo, your interior world is weird for perspective. Correct for this. Ooh. He got up quickly, though, for someone who just almost laid it on their head. Uh-oh. Oh, I like that shot, too, where it's like the orientation is different, too. Oh, and they keep shifting it. I love that because it's like disorienting for even a viewer to have the perspective, like what is down and what is up, shifting constantly between the different shots. But we like Zangetsu. It's only white Ichigo that's a little bit terrifying. And really terrifying in some instances. When he takes the reins, very terrifying. Okay, but if he can take out Zangetsu, then he can't take out the Hollow, right? Which means that no one is helping Ichigo with that particular obstacle, which is also scary. I want us to be friends though. I wonder if Zangetsu is legitimately wanting to fight Ichigo or if he's playing the part. If he wants to find out what's going on. And it's easier to just play into their expectations of all zanpakuto are angry at the Soul Reaper that they work with and find out what happens than to give away that there's actually more of a bond between him and Ichigo. Because I feel like there is. Because I feel like they're really new in comparison. Whereas the other Zanpakuto have probably spent a really, really long time with their Soul Reaper and may not have been treated as a person very well. Yeah, you might want to run. Oh, of course, Miyuri is testing on himself. I mean, I guess that's better than I'm testing it on someone else, because that also seems scary. I feel like he's enjoying this too much. It makes me uncomfortable. True. You'll have to see what happens before you actually know, right? Like, you can guess, but you won't know what happens until someone, like, tries to kill one of the zanpakuto and sees what happens to the Soul Reaper. Plus, I feel like Unohana can definitely hold her own. I feel like she's probably one of the scarier ones. She'll be fine. I believe in her, even though she's one of the ones where I haven't learned a whole lot about her ability, because she's usually very passive and doesn't really get involved in the fighting part. Is there to be a healer. So, but I feel like she has a lot of scary energy underneath the calm and caring facade. That's what I was waiting for. Oh, it's the scary Ichigo, too. It's not the controlled, hollow that we sometimes see, which I was worried about. I'm like, I feel like Zangetsu helps balance some of that out, because he gives Ichigo power that he could use against the hollow inside of him. Sort of? Yeah, Ichigo is complex, to say the least. But I guess it is kind of a advantage in that Ichigo has power that isn't based on his zanpakuto. So without his zanpakuto, he still has that ability to pull from. The problem is whether or not he can control it enough to do anything useful with it. Ooh, that is new. How long have we been able to do that? And can we not do it again? Oh no. He's starting to go more hollow. This only ends poorly. I mean, it's a really cool character design, but it's really scary. Ooh, that shift in the voice is really cool, though. The tone shifting. Oh dear. Yeah. Ichigo's a little bit scary when he goes hollow. By a little bit, I mean completely terrifying. This is what I was worried about. I'm like, without Zangetsu, he's only gonna have the hollow to pull from, and he's not gonna have as much power to, like, counter it, right? Keep it in a sort of controlled manner. And also, the hollow is gonna see this as an opportunity to, like, take over and is gonna jump at it, obviously. We all know that there's a constant fight for who's in control. Interesting that Zangetsu is fighting that whole time with one hand, though. I feel like he's trying not to hurt Ichigo. by not like fully getting into the fight. Oh, is Ichigo fighting back? Makes sense. Again, constant struggle for who's in control. Just that Ichigo usually wins out. There's something very disturbing about him, like, ripping at his face, basically. I like the mix of the spiritual pressure, too. The two colors. The kind of, like, the mixing of the different souls, the different people that are involved in this whole thing. It's gonna all crumble. Welcome back, Ichigo. You look a little haggard. Understandable. Ooh, his clothes are all beat up, which is not a good sign either. Ugh. I'm like worried about Ichigo, but I think it says a lot about him that one, he's immediately worried about what he did to Zangetsu, but also two, that even though he has this power now to compensate for the fact that he doesn't have his zanpakuto, he's still like, yeah, but the hollow, I can't give it control. Even if it means putting myself at a disadvantage, I can't give in. Which is understandable. Ichigo's difficult relationship with the hollow, but I still want to see a point where he's like, it's all me, and I get to own the hollow too. Like, it's, Ichigo and the hollow and Zangetsu all simultaneously existing and finding a way to do that together. Because I think it'll be epic if Ichigo could like get to that point. Maybe it'll happen later on, but until then, I can dream. I had a thought. If they had all of this planned to get Ichigo to show up because he has a Zanpakuto, will they try to get his dad to show up? He is a Zanpakuto. What about Urahara? He is a Zanpakuto. What? Are they having a meeting in the bathroom? So we had a return of scary hollow Ichigo, which honestly I feel conflicted about because on the one hand, I'm like scary hollow Ichigo, but on the other, the design is so cool. I feel like my artist is conflicting with the fact that this is like awful for the characters, but I think that it's a really good thing to incorporate into this because Ichigo has like a very delicate balance between all of the powers inside of him, and it's really just like will and some inherent spiritual pressure strength that is keeping him in any kind of balance. And the moment that Zangetsu got pulled out of that is going to throw off the balance that's been happening anyway. But also Zangetsu was like pro Ichigo's side when it came to the hollow, so Zangetsu was definitely lending his power to Ichigo in suppressing the hollow. Well, Zangetsu's gone now, so Ichigo has to figure out how to deal with the hollow all on his own. And like I was saying, the hollow is seeing an opportunity where Ichigo is weakened and is going to jump at it. Absolutely is going to jump at it. We know that they have this continual conflict of who's going to be the king, who's going to be in charge. So seeing an opportunity where Ichigo doesn't have the same backing that he did before, the hollow is definitely going to be trying to take over. So I really like that that was something that was incorporated into his character of the delicate ecosystem that is Ichigo's internal world and the powers that are in it. And it looks like in the next episode we're going to be digging a little bit into Ichigo's inner world and dealing with White Ichigo, the hollow, dealing with the fact that there's a bunch of stuff going on with that. So I'm excited to get some more into that because I feel like we didn't deal with Ichigo's hollow self a whole lot because Ichigo doesn't want to go anywhere near it, and I feel like that's going to be a thing that he has to overcome at some point. It probably isn't going to happen in this, and it probably isn't going to happen soon. I'm assuming that's something that maybe will happen very later on in the story. I'll have to wait a while for that to actually be something that happens, but I like that we're kind of digging into that a little bit more. Even though it's in a filler arc, I feel like it's a good point for a filler arc because you can kind of take the time to pull on some of those character threads and see what happens because it's filler. You know, like you don't have to worry about like slowing down the main story because this isn't the main story. So it offers a lot of opportunity to develop out some of the other characters. And I feel like this part of Ichigo is something that we haven't dug into a whole lot. And I like that we have some breathing room to kind of go with that. I even like the fact that we're getting a ton of time to dig into zanpakutos and their different personalities and stuff because we had that hinted and then it was never fully developed after that. So I like that this filler arc has space for those characters to do their thing because we don't need to have a bunch of time focused on certain characters doing certain things, going up against certain adversaries. You know, we've been dealing with Aizen for a lot of Bleach, so having some opportunity to let other characters have some moments to develop out I think is really cool. Whether or not that'll happen, we've been focusing a lot on Ichigo and Rukia up to this point, but I'm hopeful that we'll get some time with some of the other Soul Reapers to fully develop that out and see some of what their personalities are, what their relationships are to their zanpakuto and their abilities, their powers, being Soul Reapers and that kind of thing, because they all have very diverse personalities. So I love that we are kind of leaning into some of those character weaknesses, character faults, little conflicts within them, with Rukia being someone who is very like pro freedom and pro like helping people and that kind of a thing. We saw that with her going through like being in poverty and then going into being part of this prestigious family and getting the chance to be a Soul Reaper and then being kind of stuck in the system of doing what she's told and trying to have the right image, and then eventually kind of growing past that with the Soul Society arc and becoming more in charge of who she wants to be as a Soul Reaper. So then having someone say, I didn't get that chance, I didn't get a chance to break out and be my own person like her zanpakuto did, seeing her react as, well, now I have to set you free, I have to not imprison you because I know what that's like. Rukia knows what it feels like to feel imprisoned and not be able to do what you want, so she had to let her zanpakuto go. And then we have Ichigo, who is, you know, very reliant on people being able to help him and having friends and people that are constants for him. And Zangetsu is one of those. He's so confident. He's like, Zangetsu won't turn against me. I know this because he's so reliant on those that are loyal to him, who are compassionate to him, and he likes to see the best in people. So having that be exploited, and then when I say exploited, I feel like Zangetsu's probably on Ichigo's side still. It didn't look like he was seriously trying to hurt him, and he didn't actually say anything, so he doesn't seem to want to give some grand speech or anything about why he has a grievance. I think he's mostly going along with what's going going on to figure out what's going on with the zanpakuto, and it's easier for him to kind of get the info that he wants by portraying himself as being angry with his Soul Reaper and all that kind of stuff. But my point being that that's a weakness that Ichigo has, weakness with air quotes around it, in terms of if someone wants to exploit Ichigo. We've seen that before. People pretend to befriend him and then turn on him. So, that being one of the weaknesses, and then also Ichigo being someone who doesn't really have full control over his abilities. He's kind of making up as he goes. So the fact that he doesn't have someone there to help him with the Zangetsu, who's like directly with him all the time, he suddenly doesn't have that, and now he has to deal with the Hollow on his own, and he's like his own like literal inner demon thing going on. So I like that we're seeing those weaknesses be like amplified with the Soul Reapers and their relationships with their zanpakuto being so personalized, and like their zanpakuto knowing how to pick at those weaknesses and really get them to a point where they feel vulnerable. So I like getting to kind of pull through all of those character things. You know that I love character stories, so I'm very excited that we're getting a bunch of that in this arc. You can click this playlist to go see my previous reactions, or you can subscribe so miss next time I post a Bleach reaction, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!